Welcome to Nice and Blunt. My name is Adam Riancho, and it's time for the injury updates for week 3. It's Saturday, so I give you all of the player news that's important, and then give a final update to my rankings at every position. Let's get into it with all of the healthy rosters that you don't have to worry about. If you have any Atlanta Falcons on your team, any Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Dallas Cowboys, Detroit Lions, Las Vegas Raiders, New York Giants, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or Washington Commanders, every single player that you care about on offense is fully healthy. I also want to throw in Carolina and Denver on this list, where only Jonathan Brooks on IR and Audric Estime on IR count for unavailable players. So we already expected that. We already knew that about them. Let's move on to the injury updates, where in Arizona, not a huge name, but Greg Dortch is questionable with a hamstring injury. He is a game time decision, limited Friday in practice. He was added to the injury report late in the week. And I do think he plays, but I do think that might be a slight upgrade for Michael Wilson. They might lean on him a little bit more, but I don't think you want to start either of them. It is a good matchup against Detroit, though. In Chicago, Keenan Allen is out for the second week in a row, which means Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet get a few more targets, but probably not enough to trust. I still think DJ Moore is the only guy you feel confident about starting in Chicago. In Cincinnati, T. Higgins, fully active. He is good to go on Monday night, and that's a sigh of relief here. It was the last game of the week, so while I do think he's an excellent play, you were worried about who you would have to pivot to if he did not suit up, and now that is not a concern at all. You don't have to worry about Yoshivas in your lineup. T. Higgins, a very legit play, making his season debut against the Commanders. A terrible secondary, but they also have Mike Gesicki on the injury report. He's questionable with a calf injury, and he was limited Thursday and Friday. I do expect him to play, but probably not a player I'm counting on now that Higgins is back. In Cleveland, David Njoku, the tight end, is out once again. He'll be out for a few more weeks. And Nick Chubb also out. We expect him out for at least a month and a half. In Green Bay, Jordan Love, questionable with a knee injury, might suit up. He's been limited all week long in practice. He also was kind of limited, questionable last week. He did not suit up, though, and he is moving in the right direction. So he's a true game time decision. I think he's actually probably going to suit up, but it feels 50-50. And while I still think Malik Willis is the guy to rank, I would be worried that if you're starting the Titans defense, you might get burned if Love does get the start. So if he does, you got to bench the Titans defense. I think Josh Jacobs would have similar value, probably fewer touches, but more touchdown upside. However, the wide receivers would be way more valuable. I think Jaden Reed would become an instant top 15 wide receiver in that situation. So he'd become a must start. You'd probably consider starting Jordan Love, but probably sit him out for 1 week in a kind of bad matchup. However, I would definitely be benching the Titans defense in that situation. In Houston, though, running backs are not healthy. Joe Mixon not traveling with the team to Minnesota, so he is definitely out. So is Dameon Pierce, and that means Cam Akers is the guy. I think Cam Akers will be getting 20 plus touches this week, assuming he doesn't fumble it multiple times against his former team. So that's my only concern with Akers, but he's a very legit pickup and start this week. I'm actually starting Akers in the subscriber league, trying to replace Isaiah Pacheco. In Indianapolis, Michael Pittman, questionable with a back and calf injury, limited in practice on Friday. So not good to see him added to the injury report late in the week. He is a game time decision, expected to play, but not 100%. And that's not good, especially with Josh Downs coming back into the mix. We might see fewer targets for Pittman, who already was having a difficult time connecting with Anthony Richardson. I think Pittman is a very risky option, but still someone in the flex conversation. I get it if you're still going to start him, but I'd be a little worried, in all honesty, especially against Chicago and Jalen Johnson. In Jacksonville, though, Evan Engram is out. The tight end will not be playing in Buffalo this week, and that means Brenton Strange, who had 6 targets last week filling in, would get the upgrade. I did rank Strange already, so he's an interesting streamer, but more so just a depth piece if you are desperate at tight end. Tank Bigsby, though, also questionable. Shoulder injury for him. He did not play last week. Limited Thursday and Friday, though, and I do expect him to play, and that means Travis Etienne is not as safe. We saw a 50-50 touch split between Etienne and Bigsby in week 1, and I would be a little concerned about Etienne. Without a touchdown, he is not as safe. So he gets a slight downgrade. I'll give you my rank on Etienne in a few minutes. But in Kansas City, Pacheco, we know, is on IR. CEH is out for a few more weeks. And Kareem Hunt, while they did sign him to the roster, is going to remain on the practice squad. He will not be suiting up, will not play against Atlanta on Sunday night. So that means Carson, Steele, Samaje, Perine, and maybe Deneric Prince are the options for the Chiefs backfield. And I think I'd prefer Steele, but I don't think I really want to start any of them. I'd rather wait and see on all of these guys. I don't feel confident in this running back by committee. CEH might have the most value long-term once he's fully healthy. That might not be for a while, though. I feel really concerned putting a Chiefs running back in my lineup. In LA for the Chargers, though, they're playing in Pittsburgh, and Justin Herbert is questionable. An ankle injury makes him a game-time decision. He did not practice Wednesday, limited on Friday and Thursday, though, is a good sign. He was heavily taped up on that ankle, but according to reports, he feels a lot better, and I do expect him to play. He won't be mobile. He will probably be pretty statuesque in this game, but I do think he plays through pain. I do think he starts, and I'm still going to take the Chargers to win in this matchup. So let's hope for the best, but I do think he plays, and we would be very concerned about any Charger in our lineup if Easton Stick was the quarterback. Even the running backs, even J.K. Dobbins becomes a little riskier with Stick at QB. But Josh Palmer is questionable once again. An elbow and calf injury are the reasons why. He did not practice Wednesday or Thursday, but did return in limited capacity on Friday. So he's a game time decision. No one was starting him. I do expect him to play, though. However, that does maybe impact some target volume for Ladd and Quentin Johnston. Maybe they get a few more targets like last week. In LA, though, for the Rams, Cooper Kupp is out. Puka Nacua is on IR. We expected that, though, and that means the Niners defense is a must start. In Miami, Tua is on IR. He will not play for at least 4 games. Skylar Thompson will get the start, and that's a downgrade to the wide receivers. But Raheem Mostert, also doubtful, not going to play for the second week in a row, and that means A-Chain gets the bulk of volume, but a slight upgrade to Jalen Wright, who did see some touches alongside Jeff Wilson Jr. last week. Jalen Wright, who knows, maybe gets going sooner rather than later. In Minnesota, Jordan Addison is out for the second week, and so is TJ Hawkinson, which means Jalen Naylor gets an upgrade. I do think he's in the top 40 consideration. Not the worst option at flex. But in New Orleans, Taysom Hill, the tight end, questionable with a chest injury. He was hospitalized earlier in the week, did not practice Wednesday, but then limited on Thursday and Friday. I do think he plays. He is a game time decision, but probably not someone you're starting at all. There's going to be more rush attempts for a guy like Kamara and Jamal Williams. In Philadelphia, though, A.J. Brown out once again with his hamstring injury, as expected. Devontae Smith and Saquon get a slight bump in value. Goddard stays the same, though, and Jalen Hurts does lose some value. I do think the Saints win this game, especially without A.J. Brown. In Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson questionable with a calf injury, limited all week in practice, and I do think is available. But Justin Fields is still their starting quarterback. We will not see Russ on the field just yet. In Seattle, Kenneth Walker, doubtful again, not going to play for the second week in a row. So Zach Charbonnet is a must start in this situation. He's getting about 20 touches overall when he gets the start, and a lot of that comes in the receiving game. So great PPR value and a top 15 running back with no Kenneth Walker. In San Francisco, though, Christian McCaffrey has been placed on IR for over a week now, but Deebo Samuel is out, and now so is George Kittle. He is doubtful, not expected to play, and that is a downgrade overall to Brock Purdy. Without one of his best weapons, it's just not as safe. Limited touchdown upside for Purdy, so I did move him down in the rankings. But Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings are getting a lot more targets this week. I think they're very legit plays. At least Ayuk is a lock in your lineup. And Eric Saubert, the tight end, does crack the rankings, but probably not someone you're starting to replace Kittle. But Jordan Mason, probably going to be leaned on even more in this one. He is still my RB1 on the week. However, last player to mention is Tyjae Spears, questionable with an ankle injury. Did not practice Wednesday, upgraded to limited on Thursday, and then upgraded to full on Friday in practice. So he will play, not a player I'm starting. Tony Pollard has this job mostly to himself. So that's it for the injury updates. Let's get into my rankings now, where I did make some adjustments at running back. The top 10 remain the same, but I did take out Joe Mixon from the equation. So he was my RB12 originally, and now he is not in the ranks at all. You cannot start Joe Mixon, and that's why these other guys move up a little bit. But I did bump down Travis Etienne a couple spots. I'm worried about Bigsby and that touch split. So he's not as safe, but still RB16. I think you have to start him. He gets jumped by J.K. Dobbins and David Montgomery overall. So he moves down a little bit, and him and Ramondre Stevenson are in the top 17. I was wrong about Ramondre earlier in the week. Holy shit, Ramondre was bad. However, I did bump up Zach Moss by 6 spots because I think they're going to beat the Commanders pretty comfortably, and there is some high touchdown potential in this matchup. So game script also probably benefits Moss, and that's why I'm more confident in him. I think he's one of the better flex plays you can find this week because that volume is clearly favoring him in the Bengals backfield, but it's not fully guaranteed. I am still a little bit worried about Chase Brown, and that's why I'm not fully ready to endorse Moss inside the top 20. But at 23, a very legit play this week. I also increased my take on DeAndre Swift. I bumped him up 3 spots because the matchup is just so good against the Colts. The Colts give up 175 rushing yards per game to their opposing running backs. So Swift should get going. If he will this season, it's going to be in this matchup, and I think you have to lean into it. I trust him a little bit more, but at RB24, I get it. If you still want to keep him on your bench, he has been terrible the first 2 games. So that's why Jerome Ford and Najee Harris move down 1 spot. They get taken over by Zach Moss and DeAndre Swift. But coming into the top 30, moving up 16 spots, I now have Cam Akers here at RB27. I think he's a very legit flex play. I'm worried about the fumbles, but the volume will be there. The Vikings isn't like the best matchup you could ask for, but it's still not like terrifying. And I think Akers getting like 19, 20 touches in this one is probably a safe bet in terms of floor. So I'm starting him in the subscriber league. I need someone to replace Pacheco, and I think he's one of the better options you can get off the waiver wire this week. Akers looks in line to get a lion's share of volume. So a pretty safe play, but the fumble opportunity does scare me. I think the ceiling, though, is worth betting on why he's a top 30 play this week. I also increased Chuba Hubbard by 3 spots. I think with Andy Dalton getting this start, that's a little more appealing as well. And the Raiders are a good matchup. They've given up over 130 rushing yards per game in the first 2 weeks. So Chuba hopefully doesn't get vultured by Miles Sanders, but at RB30, probably a guy you're putting on the bench. And other than that, I did increase Chase Brown and Carson Steele inside the top 35, but only because I took out Kareem Hunt and because I think this Commanders matchup is a bit more appealing for a guy like Brown. But I don't think you're starting either of them. I'd be very worried about their respective committees, and I don't think you can trust either player in this game. I'd be worried about Steele and any Chiefs running back, to be honest with you. So that's my updated running back rankings. The top 40 have changed, but mainly it's just Joe Mixon getting taken out, Akers moving up, and a guy like Zach Moss and DeAndre Swift gaining a little bit of value while Etienne moves down just 1 spot. But let's pivot to wide receiver, where in the top 30, there aren't that many changes, but I did bump up Brandon Ayuk 2 spots overall. With no George Kittle, I see even more volume for him, and I do think he's a lock in your lineup. I'm tempted to put him above even Tyreek Hill, but Hill is still matchup proof. Even with Skylar Thompson, I still would rather go with Tyreek. And Chris Godwin has looked way better through the first 2 games than Ayuk has. So I still prefer them, but I think the volume is just so safe for Ayuk. He's on par with Rashee Rice, and I do think he'll be better than Garrett Wilson was earlier this week. So Ayuk, now at number 8, I think you have to start him if you have him. I really touted him early in the offseason, and it is starting to come to fruition. Let's hope so in week 3. Other than that, though, I have not made any changes inside my top 25. Good to see T. Higgins fully active, but I already ranked him at number 20. I'm staying put on that. The only other change in the top 30 would be Rashid Shaheed moving up 2 spots because this matchup is just so good. He's been way better than I thought the first 2 games, and I want to stop under ranking him. So I bumped him up. I think he gives you at least 10 points this week. And there's always some 70-yard touchdown upside with him on any given play. So I like Shaheed. I think it's a great matchup, and he looks very solid. And the role in this offense is pretty secure. So I'd rather start him than George Pickens or Drake London this week. I think he's a better, safer play, and I view him in the same tier as guys like Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and even Mike Evans this week, who gets a tough matchup. But Shaheed, definitely a guy you want to start. Moving forward, he looks like a great swing for the fence with a decent floor as well. But Michael Pittman is questionable. I'm still going to rank him at number 32. I did not change my opinion there. However, Jaden Reed right behind him at 33 would legitimately move up 20 spots if you told me that Jordan Love would start. I'd rank him at number 13 above Devontae Adams right behind Chris Olave this week. And I think if you had Jaden Reed, you'd have to start him no matter what. So keep your eyes open there. He would be moving up drastically if Love does play, but until we know for sure, just a low-end flex play. And I did bump up Juwan Jennings as well, 12 spots overall. He's now my wide receiver 35 at the Rams because there's no Deebo, so you already trusted him a decent amount. With no Kittle, now he could score a touchdown as well, and I think the volume will be safe. I think at least 8 targets is in line for Juwan Jennings. So very interesting option. I think if you wanted to start him above like even Amari Cooper or Michael Pittman, I wouldn't be that shocked. I think it's not that crazy, but in the same tier as even George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, there is a little bit of risk with Jennings. Good luck, but he is a legit streamer. I think a very good pickup at the moment because we don't know how long Deebo or Kittle will remain out. So Juwan Jennings at wide receiver 35. I might be too low on this rank, but outside the top 35, it's pretty risky. I think you're just hoping for touchdowns, but in that vein, I think Jerry Jeudy deserves a bit more credit. I bumped him up 5 spots because he's looked very similar to Darnell Mooney this season, so in the same tier for sure. I was too low on him at 43. He's now at 38. And then I did bump up Tyler Lockett 1 spot. I think the floor is pretty safe with Lockett, but he mainly only moves up because Deontay Johnson moves down. I bumped him down 3 spots overall, and I increased my take on Adam Thielen. I think Deontay and Thielen are legitimately back-to-back and could go off this week with Dalton. It's possible we see a role for them similar to last year when Thielen was a absolute dog. So it could be either one. I think my take on Thielen was a little too low earlier in the week, and it's truly a toss-up between these two. Who will lead the team in targets? So a bit more appeal with Dalton. We'll see what happens and then adjust the take moving forward once we get some clarity about this situation with a new quarterback in town. So good luck there. I'm probably not starting either of them, but did increase Thielen in the rankings, and that's why Sutton moves down 4 spots. He gets jumped by a few guys, and Gabe Davis, I did bump up 4 spots. He's now back-to-back ranked above Christian Kirk. I previously had it the other way around. Now I have them back-to-back, and I would prefer Gabe Davis. I've actually seen more from Davis than Kirk so far, and Kirk looks washed. He's looked really brutal the first 2 games. So I'm only starting Brian Thomas in this offense, other than ETN, I guess, of these receivers. So not going to start either of them, but I do prefer Gabe Davis overall. I'll just mention it because I did change that. And then outside the top 50, a few minor changes, but nothing that really matters too much. Christian Watson, Michael Wilson move up a little bit. So that's it. Andre Yoshivas also moves down. I don't think Yoshivas is anywhere near as safe with T. Higgins fully healthy. So that's it at wide receiver, my adjusted rankings there. Let's move over to quarterback, where for the most part it is the same, but I did drop down Brock Purdy 4 spots. He's now my quarterback 15. I previously had him 11 above Dak Prescott. And with no George Kittle, he's just not as safe anymore. So a little bit worried about the touchdown upside. You have to trust Jennings a little bit more. And Ayuk has been kind of rusty. So they might lean on Mason a bit extra. And Purdy is still a decent option, but nowhere near as safe without George Kittle. That is for sure. Moving down 4 spots is a legit downgrade, a full tier overall. So Prescott moves up 1 spot, and Darnold and Mayfield would move up 1 spot, but I actually think I was too low on Anthony Richardson earlier in the week. I had him at number 15, and now he's number 12 in my rankings. So the rushing upside is what reminded me, yeah, I was probably a little too low. I hate this matchup, though. I really worry about some interception potential and a very low score for the Colts. I think the efficiency is not going to be there for Richardson this week. Maybe he connects on a deep touchdown again, but that's kind of not safe to bet on. And if it wasn't for this matchup, I'd probably still rank him top 5. But I legitimately think the Bears are going to be a big downgrade for every quarterback all season long, and it's just a matchup I want to avoid. He is not a very safe option this week. I am still benching him for Jared Goff in my own personal lineup. However, I could be wrong. Betting against Richardson might be the wrong move. I think he'll look a lot better starting next week and moving forward, especially after the Pittsburgh game. But even the Pittsburgh game, I think he'll look better than this week against Chicago. So those are my only changes at quarterback. Dak moves up 1, Richardson moves up 3, and Purdy moves down 4 spots. But at tight end, I took out George Kittle. He was previously tight end 1, so everybody moves up 1 spot. But I did put Eric Saubert, his backup, in at number 19. I think there's a world where he has value, but not enough to trust. And I did bump up Brenton Strange above Mike Gesicki because Gesicki is banged up. So that's the cutoff point for streamers, in my opinion, with Mike Gesicki at number 14. But Strange, I think, is a little bit better. At number 13, he's a legit plug and play if you need someone off the waiver wire at tight end. So not many changes, just taking George Kittle out of the equation. And then at defense, I did change my take on 3 different teams. I bumped down the Titans to number 18, so 5 spots lower. I think with the risk that Love plays, that's definitely not ideal, and the Titans could burn you if the Packers go off with Love under center. So they're not as safe. I don't think they're a good start anymore, but maybe it's still Malik Willis, so I'll keep that in mind and continue to rank them top 20, but at 18, I'm going to pass. And then I'm a little bit more confident in the Ravens beating the Cowboys comfortably. So I moved them a few spots apart. I bumped up the Ravens 3 spots to number 13 and the Cowboys down 2 spots to number 19. And I would definitely trust the Ravens a little bit more. Lamar Jackson is 20-1 against NFC opponents, and they should win this game possibly comfortably. It could look like that Lions game last year where the Ravens won like 30-5. So I do trust the Ravens. It is in Dallas, though, so they're not like top 10, but I do think they're a legit top 13 option this week. And because the Titans and Cowboys move down, that's why the Falcons and Bengals move up 2 spots, but my opinion on them has not changed. They're still kind of risky, but top 20 at the end of the day. So that's my updated rankings. Here it is on the screen at quarterback, tight end, and defense. I feel really confident with the players above the blue line as well as the dark green line. But if you're a little bit in the streaming conversation, a little bit more risky, I still think guys above the light green line are legit starts. It's not the end of the world. If you have the top 14 defenses, the top 8 tight ends, or the top 17 quarterbacks, I think you'll get some usable games out of them. Below the orange line, I think, is definitely where you are benching players. That is for sure. But here on the screen are my flex rankings, the top 40 running backs and wide receivers. I feel very confident for maybe 20-plus point production above the blue line. Above the dark green line, I would expect about 15-plus points. Above the light green line, I would expect about 12, 11-plus points. Below the orange line, though, I think is the cutoff for 8 points, and I think you want to bench guys once you get below that orange line for sure. So gets a lot more risky as you move down the board. Obviously, that's the nature of the rankings. But yeah, here it is on the screen. You can pause it if you still need it for those lineup decisions. But that's it for me in this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And as always, I will answer your comments down below all of your start-sit questions before Sunday kickoff. That's it. I'll see you next time. My name is Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.